Welcome to the Health Angle Podcast with Dr. Mike Headlee and Dr. Gordon Fimreite, where we'll be exploring different angles of health to achieve the best version of yourself. Now, here's your hosts, Dr. Mike and Dr. Gordon.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Mike, and with me is Dr. Gordon. Welcome, Gordy.
Hi, welcome, everybody, and welcome to the Health Angle, where we take a different subject each episode with the goal of optimizing your health and longevity. If you're new to us, please subscribe, please like, and also comment. We appreciate the comments as well. So, Dr. Mike,
Absolutely.
Off air last time, we talked about what subject we should do next. And I noticed that you wanted to do good fats versus unhealthy fats. And you certainly had your comment about how bad these bad fats are. So I'm looking forward to hearing your response and really diving into this a little bit deeper. So why did you pick this subject?
Well, I believe it's the most destructive ingredient in our diet, and that is bad fats. And we've talked about some other really, really important topics, even though they're simple and straightforward, like exercise and optimizing sleep. And we also talked about inflammation. We thought that was a really, really high important topic. However, once we go through this, and I just describe some of the research and some of the basics of this, I think you'll agree that this is a top 5, subject and topic that it needs to be on the top of your mind whenever you're making a meal or eating out or purchasing product in a grocery store, farmer's market, whatever. The most destructive ingredient in your diet, bad fats. So I'm going to cut to the chase and read the summary first. Here's the summary. Do yourself and your family a favor. Embark on a journey to eliminating all seed oils from your diet today to ward off virtually all chronic degenerative diseases, the cancers, the heart disease, the dementias, the arthritis, the autoimmune issues. This means avoiding all seed oils and even fruit oils like olive oil and avocado oils. That's getting people's attention. What? That's all I use is avocado and olive oil. We'll talk about that, as they are frequently adulterated with cheap seed oils. I'm not saying they're bad if they're the highest quality, but a bad oil is a bad oil. Bad cut of meat's a bad cut of meat. A rotten piece of fruit or vegetable is rotten, and it's not good. Cooking with ghee, butter, or beef tallow, and avoiding all processed foods, as they are typically loaded with seed oils for stability and shelf life and longevity and economics. So avoiding eating in a lot of restaurants, not all, in a lot of restaurants, they use cheap oils and cheap ingredients, as nearly all use massive amounts of seed oils to cook with and put in their sauces and dressings. So here's another controversial topic too, and a statement is avoiding chicken and pork. And I'll explain why that is, but I'm just going over the summary, and stick to bison and lamb and other wild meats as well. So people sometimes, I know people that all they eat is chicken. And like, why is chicken not healthy, even if it's range fed, even if it's organic? And so that's my summary. And I know that piqued up a few people's ears to say, what? Cook with ghee, butter, or beef tallow, avoid all processed foods and olive oil and avocado and chicken and pork. What the heck is this guy talking about? And here, here's a summary of it, good fats and bad fats. What are good fats? Like I just said, ghee and butter and beef tallow and lard and I don't know about your grandma, Dr. Gordy, but my grandma, grew up on a farm and use, fried bacon and bacon grease, and lard and things like that. And then I grew up, I caught some crappies on the lake I grew up in, but then I fried them in Crisco, and I'll talk about Crisco coming up too. So I used the worst fat possible from a factory. And so it ruined some local fresh fish. So tell me your experience, Dr. Gordy.
Well, I remember being, my parents, grandparents were both raised on farms. So we went to visit my grandparents. Yeah, you went straight from the barn, from the cow raw milk right into the right onto our table for drinking, the beverage. So fresh raw milk, organic at that time. There's a lot of misconceptions about fats being harmful. And yes, there's a tremendous amount. I talked to my brother. My brother is actually a food scientist. And I asked him, hey, what do you think of this whole realm of fats and bad fats? And he referenced a book and he said, everybody should read this book. It's called The Big Fat Surprise by Nina. I'm going to destroy her last name. Teicholz. It's Teicholz. If you're watching this, I'll list it below on the title. Basically said in the 90s, they used to fry the French fries you'd have in McDonald's and all these other fast food restaurants. They used to put them in a type of animal fat. They decided that animal fat was too unhealthy. They switched it to oil fats. And then all of a sudden they got into this trans world, the trans fat world, which just plays havoc on the body. Now, anytime you eat fats or anything on your label, it should say if it's a trans fat and how much that those are on all your labels. Trans fats are absolutely awful. So we'll get into more of this, but I think we'll get into the good, healthy fats, which are anti-inflammatory type of fats. Then we'll get into the bad, unhealthy fats, which are pro-inflammatory. Then we'll just dive into saturated, unsaturated fats, talk a little bit about cholesterol, and then just list what we should do, what we should eat.
Yeah, and one of the tricky things about reading labels and understanding this, you can look on a bag of Doritos and it will say 0 trans fats or Pringles or some of that type of stuff, because legally they can put 0 trans fats. And I know darn well most Doritos and Pringles have trans fats because they can put 0% trans fats in there if it's less than 2% per serving. And then it says, oh, there's 4 chips is a serving. Well, for me, a whole serving's a bag, no matter how big it is. And that's just not fair, because people look at, I'm buying chips with no trans fats. That's just deceptive, and that's just wrong. So there's 2 types of fatty acids. And why are we talking about fats and lipids? Because our cells are made with a lipid bilayer, 2 layers of fats or lipids. And so if we have healthy cell membranes, good nutrition can get into our cells and make energy through our mitochondria and do what they're supposed to do. And then when it's creating waste and energy, it can get rid of that. And so we just like we need good skin, we want really strong, we don't want greasy and dry and cracked skin so it can protect us. Well, we need good, healthy cell membranes, lipid bilayers. So there's 2 types of fatty acids.
Mike, I want to make one. I'm going to jump in.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in real quick because I want the audience to know when you're talking about cell, we're talking about 36 trillion cells in our entire body, and every one of them need a healthy fat for the cell membranes like you talked about, but also allowing transport in and out of the cell needs healthy fat. So what makes up the cardiovascular cells? A few trillion cells. What makes up the skin cells? A few trillion cells. So you definitely need these good fats, and every cell in the body needs it. So go ahead, continue what you were talking about.
Great point. 2 types of fatty acids. Saturated fats are fully loaded with hydrogen atoms forming straight chains. And then there's something called unsaturated fats, but they come in 2 varieties: monounsaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats called PUFAs, P-U-F-A-S, polyunsaturated fats. And so saturated, unsaturated, and in the unsaturated, there's monounsaturated and polyunsaturated. And so in our saturated fats, our tissues are made mostly from these. That's why we need more of those. The unsaturated fats, the monounsaturated fats, are different from the multiple unsaturated fats. And so the main dietary polyunsaturated fats are omega-3s and omega-6s. And I know a lot of people listening, and you and I, Dr. Gordy, take omega-3s, krill oil or fish oil or cod liver oil. And, back in the day, it wasn't flavored. Didn't seem like it tasted as good. People had to choke it down their kids. But now it's very pleasant and very, very easy to take. And,
Mhm.
and I could chew a capsule, or I like the liquid. It's just really, really healthy for us. But the
Yeah.
omega-6s, there's something called linoleic acid you have to really watch out for, because that's the number one destructive thing, causing a lot of these chronic degenerative issues. And it's not bad because we need omega-6s, but excess, just like a lot of things, have an alcoholic beverage or something, or have some sugar, but just not excessive, because then it really, really pollutes the body.
Mhm.
And so it's really critical to know the omega-3 versus the omega-6, the polyunsaturated, and I know you'll touch a little bit about that. But here's a couple more really important things. The most pernicious toxin in the modern diet, and the fat you need to minimize consumption of, is the omega-6 linoleic acid. It makes up 68 to 80%, 60 to 80% of the omega-6 fats. They primarily contribute to people's chronic diseases. So if you have, a degeneration in your knee, you have chronic sinus issues, you have congestive heart, you got clogged arteries, you have cholesterol issues, you're having brain fog and memory issues, diabetes. Those are chronic diseases that really, really, really significantly are made worse with bad fats.
Mhm.
So, but here it is really important though. They're only toxic when consumed in excessive quantities. So we'll talk about what exactly to do in the very end.
That's great. So, Mike, I just want to really talk to the audience about the good, healthy fats. When you think of the three macro foods, fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. So the reason that's listed as one of the three main macronutrients is that we need fat. It gives us energy. We absolutely need it. It's a building blocks that allows things in your cell, out your cell, like you were talking about, the membrane as well. 60% of our brain is fat, and we need cholesterol. Our body actually produces cholesterol. And if we have too much, the body wants to break that cholesterol down, but we need cholesterol. And I know back in, I don't know, maybe it was in the 90s, there was this big fad, like get rid of all your fats. You don't need any fat, get rid of your fats. So people were doing that, and they actually saw an increase of neurological problems. They saw dementia, Alzheimer's increase at that time because of that fad. So we definitely need fat. So the brain, 60% fat. Wow. So cholesterol, most of our body that makes cholesterol, most of it is made in the brain, and it's for synapses, it's for nerve function, etc. So really important that we get that cholesterol and those good fats. Fats also carry vitamins like A, D, and K, and that's absorbed in the intestinal tract. We absolutely need fats to absorb those really important vitamins. And it's also, fat is really necessary for physiological processes and as well as biological functions, growth, development, and hormone production. Absolutely need it. Can you imagine if we didn't have vitamin D? I'm going back to we need fats to carry fat soluble vitamins. Can you imagine if we didn't have any D in our diets because we didn't have enough good fats to process it, to, get through the process, or not enough vitamin K for clotting, or vitamin E for anti-inflammatory, or A for eyesight, among other tissues? Really important. The bad fats, these contribute to inflammation, like Dr. Mike was saying, and omega-6s. We need some, but hey, they can be bad at too much. And these bad fats are through processed foods and fast foods. In fact, Western diet, the way it is now, we get 16 times more bad fats, unhealthy fats, than we actually need. And you're talking about the omega-3 to the omega-6 ratio. We need to balance that out. And the ideal balance would be 1-to-1 or 1-to-2. I'm talking like 1 omega-3 to 1 omega-6. And so right now it's at 1-to-20. We have 20 times more omega-6s, and we can't have that. So even a 1 to 4 would be better than. So then we talk about unsaturated fats, like Dr. Mike was saying, the monounsaturated fats such as avocados, olive oil, and nuts, polyunsaturated fats, fatty fish, flaxseed, and walnuts, and getting some good overall fats. We'll talk about the list here in a moment. But Mike, I want to just say one thing about these oils. A lot of people don't think of it. They're baking with these oils, putting it in to saute something, or even in their frying goods, anything like you were talking about, these oils, and they're like canola oil, the different seed oils, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing, this is what I want to talk about, bleaching and deodorizing. You wonder why these vegetable oils, they're odorless, they're not natural. It's because they do this bleaching and this deodorizing, which makes it even worse. And it also takes some of the antioxidant and some of the other vitamin compounds out of the equation.
And then there's smoke points too. Even if you import really pure olive oil and it's 100% olive oil, and then they're frying eggs with it, and they're stir frying vegetables because it doesn't have a high smoke point. It should be put on your vegetables and on your salads after you've cooked it, or dip bread into it or what have you. And pure avocado oil, coconut oil, the butters, the ghees can handle higher heat. And that's critical. I'm not anti olive oil. I'm anti bad olive oil, and I'm anti cooking high heat olive oil and wrecking the purity of it. So here's a little bit of history, Dr. Gordy. Before 1866, the Western world, for the most part, only consumed animal fats. That's a long time ago. 1895 is when D.D. Palmer discovered chiropractic. You talked about that last week. Tallow, suet, lard, and butter are examples of these fats. Eastern societies used cold-pressed fats like coconut and palm oil. Vegetable oils like we know them today simply did not exist. So the single greatest change to the human diet in all of history was the introduction of industrialized processed seed oils around 1866. At the time, Procter & Gamble used a newly invented hydrogenation process to convert surplus unstable cottonseed oil into a synthetic seed oil, sold to this day under the name Crisco. And that's what I grew up with, frying our fish in Crisco, or chemicals, or this hydrogenated yucky stuff that just probably inflamed my heart and my organs. Shortly after that, margarine, which is made from seed oils, was introduced. In recent years, the company has largely converted using palm, soy, and canola oil for its Crisco. I don't even know why Crisco is on the shelf, quite frankly. It has no human health benefits. It's crazy. Historically, we can see that seed oil use increased from approximately 2 grams per day in 1865 to 5 grams per day in 1909, to 18 grams a day in 1999. So as of 2008, that's still a while ago, the average consumption was 29 grams a day. So in terms of percentages, seed oils accounted for approximately 1/100th of total calories in 1865, and increased to more than 1/4 of total calories by 2010, a 25-fold increase. One other really thing to get our listeners thinking, Dr. Gordy, is I believe seed oils are far worse than sugar. And we both agree high fructose, and sugar just isn't that great in excess, except in fruits and whole foods and things like that. But just run-of-the-mill Reese's peanut butter cups and Diet Coke and high fructose stuff is horrible. But here's why I think seed oils are worse than sugar. In 1822, the average U.S. sugar consumption was 6 pounds per person per year. This rose to a high of 108 pounds per person per year in 1999. This is a 17-fold increase, but seed oils went up 25-fold during that same time period. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Processed foods typically contain about 21% sugar. However, up to 50% or more of the overall calories contained in most processed foods come from seed oils. So it's the U.S. carb consumption has declined since 1997, believe it or not, total carb consumption, but obesity and type 2 diabetes have steadily increased, and they continue to rise. And it coincides with the surge of all of the bad seed oil consumption. It's crazy. You have any comments on that about sugar and bad fats, Gordy?
Well, I mean, I want to just reiterate, Mike, going back, what we're really talking about here, the bottom line is we want to reduce people's chronic diseases, and which is, includes heart disease and stroke and cardiovascular conditions as well as cancer. We want to avoid fried food, French fries, donuts, deep fried fast foods, margarine, either it's a tub of margarine or the sticks of margarine, vegetable shortening, baked goods, cookies, cakes, pastries, and processed snacks, crackers, and microwave popcorn. So these are the things we want to avoid. But yeah, Mike, it's havoc. I'm with you. And people are wondering, well, how do I know where I'm at? If you go in for a blood test, they can actually check your blood levels to see where you're at. They do a polyunsaturated fatty acid test, EPA omega-3 index, and they can also check omega-6, omega-3 ratio. So they actually have testing where you can actually see where you're at. I have a list of good fats that we can go through here, Mike, after you finish your point, but go ahead.
Another major reason why seed oils are exponentially more pernicious to your health than sugar is that they last much longer in your body. The half-life of linoleic acid or bad fats is around 600 to 680 days, or approximately 2 years. So that means it'll take you about 6 years to replace 95% of your linoleic acid or bad fats in your body with healthy fats. So your glycogen or your sugar stores can be exhausted in about 1 or 2 days. So if you go on a sugar binge, I'm not a big fan of that. I've done it, been there, done that. But a sugar binge, it doesn't stick around for years, destroying our health like the bad seed oils do. So think about that. We can burn through some sugar, especially fruit sugar, especially if you make a homemade pie with natural sugars and stuff. But if you're eating the fried chips and the donuts, like you said, and the microwave popcorn and frying stuff in Crisco and using margarine and things like that, that's really affecting our cell membranes, all aspects of our trillions of cells. So the main reason why excess linoleic acid and bad fats cause disease is that it prevents your mitochondria from working well. And we've mentioned mitochondria in a podcast or two. And mitochondria are subcellular organelles responsible for producing most of our cellular energy in the form of ATP. And without ATP, our cells cannot function and repair themselves normally. And so we're self-healing and self-repairing organisms. And we've talked about how the nervous system controls and coordinates that in our Chiropractic 101 podcast. But we need our cells to be really, really healthy for that nerve communication to help reproduce and repair and heal on levels. Just some of the simple damages of these bad fats, they damage our cell lining and our blood vessels. They cause memory impairment, Dr. Gordy, increase your risk of Alzheimer's, strip your liver of glutathione, thereby lowering your antioxidant defenses. They impair our immune system and increase mortality, make our fat cells more insulin sensitive. So then if you do have the high sugar and the high bad fats, wow, it causes insulin resistance, inhibits just other hormones, and inhibits our mitochondrial function. It's pretty bad, Gordy, when we see obesity rising and chronic degenerative diseases just on the rise. There's a lot of causes of that, but let's do the things that we can control, is not buying the bad fats and consuming the bad fats. So go ahead.
It's unfortunate that we live in a world that salty snack foods and processed foods it's a big market. It's a $1 trillion industry, and it's really tough. I was talking to my brother about being a food scientist. His industry right now is animal fats. for production of different foods. There's competition with these bad oils, as you were talking about, the ones that become a hard solid after they're room temperature, the ones that change configuration after you're cooking them at high temperatures or you're baking them with the different foods. So it's a tough one because every advertisement out there is pushing for this stuff. And it's hard to escape. I mean, if you're living a normal life, you're going to get some degree of that. But the key, like you said, I'm with you 100%, Mike. We have to be proactive with our health. It's hard in today's world to actually go out of our way to be as healthy as we can. So with that said, I'm going to go through a list and you can add to it, Mike. And these are things that you should go out of your way to try to eat more of. First of all, supplementation. Get that omega-3. Try to get as much omega-3 as you can. You can get good fats through avocado, butter and ghee, coconut oil, MCT oil, extra virgin olive oil. You can even sprinkle that on top of your salad besides cooking at a lower temperature. Grass-fed organic beef, eggs, fatty fish, nuts and seeds, and then dairy, preferably raw, like raw milk. Cottage cheese, also a good one. And then to end it, moderation with some dark chocolate. So that's my list, Mike. What do you have to add?
Well, what foods to avoid and how? Here, I have a really, really cool resource to track your fat intake. Primary sources of linoleic acid include seed oils used in cooking, processed foods, and restaurant foods made with seed oils, condiments, seeds, and nuts. Most olive oils and avocados due to the high prevalence of adulteration of the process. Animal foods raised on grains such as conventional chicken and pork. Why is chicken not the absolute best? Because they only have one stomach. These bigger animals like cows, they have three stomachs, and they process even if they're eating grains and soy and some bad foods. It doesn't change their fat as bad because of the three stomachs. But chickens, if they're getting bad feed and bad corn, and also antibiotics and the glyphosate on their food too is really horrible. So ideally cutting linoleic acid down and bad fats below 7 grams per day. So how do you monitor that? Here is your tip that I think you'll all really like. There's a free online nutrition tracker called Chronometer, Chronometer. Chronometer. You can download that free app on your computer or on your phone, and you can put everything in it, and it will track to the 10th of a gram of your bad fats versus good fats and omega-3s. So it's a really, really neat thing. If you want to do it for a while, just to see if you can get that 1-to-1 ratio to omega-3s to omega-6s, and just make sure you aren't getting your omega-6 linoleic acids out of control. And, coconut oil is low in linoleic acid or bad fats, but it doesn't have as much fat-soluble vitamins that tallow and butter contain. And I know some people freak out when they want to fry eggs in butter and ghee and tallow and things like that, but it's chock full of really, really, really good things. And, so, here's the thing about olive oil that I know some people that just can't wrap their head around, Dr. Gordy, but tests have revealed that anywhere from 60 to 90% of olive oil sold in America, grocery stores and restaurants, are adulterated with cheap oxidized omega-6 vegetable oil, such as sunflower oil or peanut oil. And that's just too bad, because almost all olive oil is kind of pricey. And it's like, I don't want to buy really pricey organic virgin olive oil if it's going to be mixed in with some cheap oils, and I'm actually hurting myself. So you really have to do your due diligence. If you're a wine drinker, you don't just grab any bottle off the shelf. You really find out what kind of wine you like and what's healthy and biodynamic, and you need to really do some homework on the best quality olive oils. And the same with avocado oil. The 2020 study showed that 82% of avocado oil is adulterated, mislabeled, and or of poor quality. That's a lot. And I like avocados, and I like avocado oil. And here's another. I'm kind of the bearer of bad news. I'm sorry, Dr. Gordy. You give them the good news on what foods to eat and are positive and stuff. But most people who are interested in health believe that nuts and seeds are a heart healthy staple. I mean, I like nuts. There's way worse things I think you can eat. But most nuts and seeds are exceedingly high in linoleic acid. And linoleic acid isn't poison unless we get out of control. Well, what if I'm having handfuls of almonds every day, and then I drink almond milk, and then I'm having other seeds and other things? So, for example, 50% of the fat in pecans is linoleic acid. The only exception is macadamia nuts. And they're the lowest percent of linoleic acid. And so, someone can have 10 to 30 a day without any issues with raising linoleic acid, but nuts, I mean, number one, the quality of the nuts too, and the mold content, and are they roasted? Do they have bad salt on them? But nuts aren't in high amounts, aren't the greatest snack and for our fat content. And then also a number of animal foods you might not suspect are loaded with this harmful fat. Ruminant animals like cows and buffalo, sheep, lamb, goat, deer, elk, and other game, they have low linoleic acid content, milk, and no matter what they eat, they have these three stomachs, and it's just how they process it. But animals with a single stomach, like chickens and pigs, cannot make this conversion, and then they're just not as good. And it's challenging when some people love chicken, and that's all they eat is chicken. And red meat has got vilified, just like butter and ghee and animal fats and stuff. But it's all about the quality if you know where your fats and your meat are coming from. And then seafood too, you mentioned wild caught Alaskan salmon, but sardines, anchovies, mackerel, and herring are a really good source of good fats too. Tuna, that's used to be really, really, really popular in a health food, but I think that has a lot of mercury in it as well, and it doesn't have the high fat content as the sardines, wild-caught salmon. So we just have to worry about pollution, disease, and toxicities and inferior quality besides the bad fats. And so, yeah, it's a crazy world out there on what to eat and how to eat and where to shop and how much money can I afford to buy the highest quality food. But the summary is really, really dive into good fats versus bad fats and read labels. And just because it doesn't say trans fat and it says zero's trans fat doesn't mean it's healthy. Cook with ghee, butter, beef tallow. You can use olive oil and avocado oil and coconut oil and MCT oils, but you really have to go with quality.
Couldn't agree more, Mike. I think the bottom line is get yourself an action plan. Figure out what fats are going to be suitable for your diet, for what you cook and make, and then make a list. I think the best way to do is write out a list of where you're using your oils and get an action plan. Finding the best cooking oil that you can find, bake with if you do the baking, and minimizing the bad fats the best you can. And really important, get a high quality supplement, an omega-3, krill oil, some fish oil, just a high quality. I think you nailed it, Mike. Great information. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks. Yeah, that was really good list of good foods to eat. And this you have to take serious because we have trillions and trillions and trillions of cells, and we're as healthy as our cells. And if we blow that off, it's going to have downstream effects of joints and brain and health and heart and cancer and reproduction and things like that. So take this topic serious, do some deep diving. So I like to end our podcast with what one takeaway are you going to share with a colleague after what we said? You can have a really good conversation on what fats they use, what fats you use in your home, and share ideas and tips and where you shop and what kind of supplements you're taking for omega-3s, and have a really nice conversation at work on your lunch hour and share some of those ideas. And then, what's your one action step that you can really take today? Can you go through your cupboards and start reading labels and see if things have trans fats? Are you going to fry eggs in olive oil anymore? Are you going to use coconut oil? Are you going to use some really organic butter or ghee or some of those type things? And really assess your fat intake and your fat levels. Check out chronometer potentially. And what's your number one action step going to be? So with that, Dr. Gordy, any final thoughts? And what are we going to talk about next week?
That's great, Mike. Next week, we talked about this, Mike, and I think it's going to be a good subject for people, especially in the world that we live in today. We're going to be talking about positive thinking, happiness, as well as gratitude. So we'll dive into that. Then we're going to have an interview coming up. So we're excited about that. We'll talk about that on our next episode. So that concludes today's topic. Please join us for next week. Please like and subscribe to our station, and we will see you next episode.
Thank you for joining us on the Health Angle podcast. Please subscribe to our channel and catch us for our next episode.